Welcome back to Americans for Truth Live. I'm Pete LaBarbera from Americans for Truth about homosexuality. Our website is americansfortruth.org. I'm here with my friend Mike Heath from Helping Hands Ministry, and we are interviewing Bill Watcott in Canada. Where are you in Canada again, Bill?
I am currently in Alberta.
Alberta, Canada. What town?
Leduc.
Leduc, Alberta. And we've got a lot more to do with Bill. We have some huge news out of the Trump administration. It's a breaking story about Trump through his openly homosexual ambassador, Richard Grenell, saying that, and you can pull that story up, Jared. These are all the headlines. Of course, the media is loving this story. Trump administration launches global effort to end criminalization of homosexuality. And I want to get to that in a second. This is a very important story, and it shows what happens when the so-called gay Republicans get active. They're always homosexual activists first. Just something to remember about whenever you're tempted to embrace as a conservative the idea of we got to get behind the gay conservatives against the gay liberals. Well, here's what happens. You have homosexual so-called conservatives. I don't believe they're truly conservative, because I don't believe you can promote immorality as a good conservative or a good Christian for that matter. By the way, this man, Rick Grenell, is also a self-styled gay Christian activist. I put that in quotes because that's an oxymoron, of course, unless you're going to go around calling other people with their besetting sins and label them that way. I guess you have the fornicating Christians, Bill, right? And you have the adulterous Christians, you have the porn using Christians. Let's just label all and call them all Christians. I mean, why do we single out this one issue and make a special exception for it? But before I start, Bill and Mike, I wanted to say I was just listening to Rush Limbaugh. I came back from the doctor, and Rush is talking about how this Andy McCabe guy. This guy has already been found to be a liar. He's being prosecuted, and it is out selling a book. And Rush is talking about the double standard and how the media is not asking him any hard questions. And, we all need to remember Bill's experienced this as more than anybody in Canada, but here in the United States as well, that this entire movement, this movement of one lie built upon another lie, built upon another, it's pretty much a media creation. And you could there are so many lies, they're often difficult to count. The idea that you're born gay, 10% of the population, that was a big lie back, and I think that started in the 70s. So many lies. The lie that you can become, here's Bruce Jenner's book, that a man can become a woman, The Secrets of My Life. Caitlyn Jenner, that's Bruce Jenner pretending he's a woman. I mean, all these lies, Bill and Mike as well. The media treats them all seriously. The media is writing this revolution. They are supporting this revolution, fueling this revolution. And that's a big part of why we're in such a desperate position as we are today.
Mm-hmm.
But Bill, let's go to the story. We have the criminalization. This story is really a troubling thing. I got to speak in Jamaica a few years ago, and in Jamaica, more than 90% of that, just in a big poll a few years ago, more than 90% of the population supports what's called the buggery law. Buggery is the British term for sodomy. There was an anti-buggery law in Jamaica. There still is. And Obama and the European Union were fighting to get them to get rid of that law. But the smart Jamaicans knew that once they start down the path of, quote, gay activism, you end up like Bill Watcott being prosecuted for your speech in Canada. And now we have the Trump administration, through this gay activist, Rick Grenell, who calls himself a gay Christian, against the complete revelation of Scripture. Now he's leading the push within the Trump administration to do the same thing that Obama was. And Bill, this is just a travesty. And he's probably in line. This Rick Grenell is reportedly in line, potentially, because Trump's pick for UN ambassador just stepped down because she had a nanny crisis, a nanny who was illegal alien, I think. Now Grinnell might be in line to be the U.S. ambassador to the UN. This is an incredible story, Bill.
Unfortunately, that's not unusual. A lot of these gay activists are well educated and well connected, and they get themselves into positions of government and big business and academia. And they often, as Christians, certainly in Canada, we're told to leave our faith at home. Unfortunately, homosexual activists don't have to leave their gay ideology at home. They bring it with them, and they spring it wherever they happen to be working. And this is the end result. You get government agencies that should be serving the people co-opted into pushing unnatural sexual practices onto the entire world.
Yeah, and Mike, the Christians have been pretty easy on Trump on this issue. He's very pro-life. He's probably the most effective pro-life president easily since Reagan, possibly more than Reagan. And yet on the homosexual issue, he appointed Grinnell the first, not the first, but an openly homosexual ambassador to Germany. That's Rick Grinnell's title right now. But Christians have been pretty easy on Trump on this, and he's done some pretty bad things. I mean, he's done a couple good things. He's trying to slow down or stop open transgenders in the military. But right after he got in office, or right after he was elected, pardon me, Bill, I don't know if you remember this, right after he did an interview with CBS 60 Minutes, and he got suckered right away into saying that the gay marriage issue was over. He pretty much wrote it off. So they've been pretty easy on him, Mike.
Yeah, but Pete, yes, the Christianity in general has been easy on Trump. Just for a minute, let's think about the distinction between the abortion issue and the homosexual issue. In my mind, they're connected because they both have to do with sexuality gone off the rails.
Right.
But abortion over the last decade, especially, the political complexion of abortion has changed. It has shifted in a direction where a guy like Trump, who doesn't put moral issues at the top of his agenda, any moral issues.
That's an understatement.
The guy owns casinos, right? I mean, he doesn't put any. But anyway, as he's doing his calculating, as perhaps the most powerful man in the world, his political calculations, abortion is a little easier for him, for a guy like that, for a strategist, okay? But the homosexual issue, even Christian pastors, priests, I mean, nobody can agree within Christianity. In fact, Christianity, both Roman Catholic and Protestant, seems to be headed toward becoming pro-gay. So what do we expect Trump to do?
Right.
What do we expect?
No power. We barely have a movement. There's no power. You're absolutely right. And so what happens is the smart, I would say the smartest gay activists are the gay Republicans right now, because they're saying, hey, we have an opportunity, just like Mike said. This is not a guy who's in many respects, of course, morally challenged. Some of his past, I hope, as Bill said yesterday, I hope Trump is becoming or has become and is growing in his faith and a born again Christian. I hope. I don't know. Only God knows. But the smart homosexual Republican activists are saying, here's a great opportunity to push our agenda. And once again, all of a sudden you open up the newspaper, Bill, and what do you see? An effort to end criminalization of homosexuality. And any country that looks at the West has to say, look, I'm sure it's the same in Canada. You had sodomy laws in Canada at one point, correct, Bill?
Sodomy was a criminal offense in Canada, carrying a lengthy prison term for repeated acts right up to 1968.
And when the effort, when we in the United States and in Britain, of course, as well, the first thing is to get rid of the sodomy law. I believe it was Antonin Scalia who predicted when the Supreme Court overturned an anti-sodomy law in Texas. Of course, that was, I think, 17 years after they had approved sodomy laws. So if you really think America is a nation of laws, that's ridiculous, because the Supreme Court is whatever whim. It's very political. The Hardwick v. Evans case, they defended, they supported an anti-sodomy law. I think that was in Georgia. 17 years later in Lawrence v. Texas, it's out, and all of a sudden, of course, the liberals say, well, it's unconstitutional. Well, It wasn't unconstitutional. You know, when there was a sodomy law, they said, oh, that's not constitutional because it's, you know, whatever the Supreme Court does, if they like what the courts do, then they say it's constitutional. But Bill, anybody with a brain, if you're looking out at the course of the homosexual revolution, now the transgender revolution, which is hooked onto it, it's incremental, and it begins with getting rid of any criminal sanctions against homosexuality. And so why wouldn't a country like Jamaica or Kenya? I don't support draconian laws by any stretch. And I know you don't either, Bill. You're not the guy who's out there saying, like the Muslim radicals, let's push homosexuals off tall buildings. But the law is a teacher. And when you remove the admonition and that aspect in the law, it starts the process of the homosexualization of the country, and that's what we're going to see if Trump if he succeeds at this.
Oh, it's becoming the world's becoming much smaller for Orthodox Christians, and certainly our sodomy laws were repealed on a lie. It was Trudeau Sr. who said the state has no business in the bedroom. Well, literally within a couple years of homosexuality being legalized, then we had public displays on beaches and during pride marches. I think homosexual activist marches were taking place within 5 years of the legalization. Then we had arguments for legalizing pedophilia in some of our more radical newspapers. And then, of course, arguing that people who don't serve and promote homosexuals should be punished. And now, of course, Christian speech, even mainstream Christian speech, is in danger of becoming illegal. And all manner of sexual deviancy is right out on the street, in your television, and on your on your school campuses. That is the outcome of homosexual activism. It cannot be placated, and it does not coexist with truth.
Absolutely, absolutely, Bill. And you are the greatest proof of that in the world. Here is a man who is being persecuted and on the verge of, we talked about it yesterday, Bill, you're talking possibly 1 to 2 years of a jail term for putting out a flyer, for doing a funny stunt. Actually, I think it's pretty creative what you did at the Toronto Gay Pride Parade. I mean, you did your gay zombie thing and you got out gospel tracts. God knows that there's no way, any other way, the gospel tracts could have been distributed at that Toronto Gay Pride Parade. And folks, I remind you, if you're American, Toronto is much more Canadian homosexual activism. They have, I mean, look at the photo on our website there that Bill has covered. He's blocked it, but that's a photo where guys are walking around completely nude. Now, I've seen that in San Francisco at things like the Folsom Street Fair, but this is right at their Pride Parade. It truly is. It's more like not a slippery slope, Bill. It's like a slippery luge, as a friend of mine, Jan LaRue, once said. It goes pretty fast, doesn't it?
Oh, it's already society. The sewer. They have signs, or have had. I didn't see in 2018, but in years previous, they had signs. Love knows no age. I noticed when they're promoting pederasty, they always put like really young, good-looking girls who are topless with those types of signs. FUCK, the Christian right, was another sign. Homosexuals running around with pictures of our Lord and Savior on their crotch. It's a very offensive and extreme parade. And yet, all three major political parties, the police, the military, several hospitals, several schools, the Public School Teachers Federation, they're all in the parade. Everybody who's a who wants to pay money to march in that parade. Right. And now, how if you pull up my Twitter post, Jared, I mean, Mike, isn't this Obama-esque? You know, now I don't know if Trump's going to follow through on this. Hopefully there'll be enough pushback and somebody's going to restrain Grinnell. It seems to me that Grinnell is given a lot of leeway. He's taking advantage of it. He's doing like most every time it happens. Homosexual so-called conservatives, when it comes time to pushing remember, they're at heart, they're still gay activists. They have that desperate need to affirm their lifestyle, and they take the opportunity, Bill. They usually take the opportunities that they have to push that agenda because it's so important to them.
And that's what we're seeing here. I mean, this is something Obama did. Obama was using foreign aid to manipulate these poor third world countries into doing pro-abortion and pro-homosexual actions, taking down, they were pushing Jamaicans and Ugandans and Kenyans across the world. You know, like the number one priority, it seems, of Obama was homosexuality and gender confusion. Of course, he also lied through his teeth about homosexual so-called marriage. Obama's own campaign aide said that he was bull blanking, S-H-I-T-ing the T-T-I-N-G, bullshitting the public. Oh, I just said it. Sorry about that. Live TV. But when he said he was against gay marriage, that was a fabrication. Obama previously had signed political questionnaires when he was running for office saying he supported same-sex so-called marriage. And so it's all a farce. But how discouraging to see Trump allowing this bill, and what counsel would you give conservatives here in the States to respond to this?
I don't think we should apologize for wanting to keep homosexual acts in the criminal code. First of all, I think that's theologically correct. We do see that homosexuality and many other sexual sins are in the criminal code, and just because something is widespread doesn't make it right. I think God was very wise in Leviticus 18 and 20, saying that this should be in the code. Perhaps in the new covenant we can show a little more grace. I don't necessarily support the death penalty for homosexual acts, but I also know as a nurse that homosexuality is far more costly to society and causes far more harm than things like petty theft, which nobody argues, drunk driving. We do have laws that restrict behavior. Homosexuality is very harmful to individuals and to society. Unfortunately, much of the church has been co-opted into silence. And in fact, there's a lack of catechism, and some Christians don't even know why homosexuality is wrong anymore. I think we have to teach. We have to teach courageously. And I think we have to defend the truth. And indeed, people like Grinnell should probably be drummed out of the administration. I think Bolsonaro in Brazil got it right when he threw out 300 leftist civil servants. The problem is we get these leftists, and that's what I'd call Grinnell, whatever he chooses to call himself. We get him into our administration and bureaucracy, and they tend to hinder the pro-family agenda. We just can't coexist with these guys.
Well, what happens is, and of course, I do not support draconian laws either. And we all know it's the radical Muslims who are doing these things like pushing people off of buildings, and then stoning them to death. These type of things happen. This is Islam, as you said, Bill. In the West, the law was on the books, but I think I read an article once, Bill. There were hardly any really truly serious prosecutions of based on sodomy in the I think, I don't know if this article, can't remember. I'll find it, whether it was the United States or the North America, but there was never anything like what we're seeing in Muslim countries in the West. But having laws on the books is important. And what I've said about sodomy laws is, look, you're not going to see a sodomy law passed in New York City unless there's a massive miraculous revival, right? But if they want to pass one, in Topeka, let them pass a sodomy law. If they want to sanction on homosexuality, and of course these laws also, let's remember, sodomy laws are used to prosecute predators. If they have been used to prosecute predators in the United States, there are aspects to this which are not going to be debated in the media.
Well, I think some of these ideas that gays are receiving the death penalty, we also have to realize the Western media, both the United States and Canada, is owned by a handful of people that are not very friendly to Christianity. And when it comes to the gay agenda, they put out a lot of fake news. They were talking about the death penalty for sodomites in Uganda. What the law really was an attempt to stop European predators from going down there and exploiting children and people with HIV, deliberately infecting other people. It wasn't the law in Uganda was not even directed at the lonely homosexual that winds up in a sinful and unhealthy relationship. that wasn't what the law was about at all.
Well, then there was massive distortions on that, and we're going to have to bring in. We're actually going to bring in people from Uganda, and of course Scott Lively, and they smeared. They called that a "kill the gays" bill, and of course that was it was a huge distortion. But the media can do that because they've decided there's no other side. Now, Bill, I want to, since you were, and I want to ask you about, why you can no longer work as a nurse again. Were you drummed out of that professional field due to your activism?
That was actually because of anti-abortion and pro-chastity activism. I was picketing during my time off work at Planned Parenthood. I actually won the case. I won the case, I think, back in 2004, somewhere around there. But by then I was already... No, I lost in 2004 in the Court of Appeal, and then we went to the Saskatchewan Court of Appeal, and I won in 2009. The problem is, by then I was out of the practice for so long that I'd have to retrain, and of course retraining means going back to school, and I just didn't have the money or inclination at the time. So I actually won the case, but at the end of the day, my career is over. It was due to defending the unborn children and promoting chastity.
And before I read what I'm going to read, Bill, let's say again, because I think it deserves repeating, what their strategy is with Bill Watcott now in Canada is just basically to get him in jail because they know he'll never stop, and they can't stop you any other way. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, they're definitely looking for a lengthy jail term this time. They elected to proceed by indictment, which is the most serious proceeding in Canada.
But Bill, since we're talking about this criminalization thing, I want to just read a little portion here. And I want to get your reaction. This is Anna Van Platon, a very famous book by Randy Schultz, who himself died of AIDS. And it's talking about in the late 60s. Now, this is at the very beginning of the in-your-face gay revolution, which was, typified by Stonewall, which was 50 years ago this year. And it's incredible what Schultz writes about this, and nobody on the other side wants to even think about this. And I think very few even conservatives want to think about it. Bill, you bring it out in your literature. You try to educate people on it. But Schultz is writing about the onset of these diseases that flowed from the immense promiscuity of the time. And he says that he's talking about an infectious disease specialist in San Francisco who was starting to discover they were seeing diseases form, quote, organisms that were setting up residence in the bowels of homosexual men. Now, normally this is Randy Schultz writing, a gay writer. Normally 5 or perhaps 10 cases of amoebic dysentery a year crossed her desk, and they were usually from a daycare center or restaurant. Now doctors were reporting many a week. She checked the figures again. Nearly all the cases involved young single men, and an inordinate number were diagnosed at the Davies Medical Center on Castro Street, which is the center of homosexual world in San Francisco. It goes on. She mentioned that it was odd to another health department staffer because she hadn't heard any complaints about neighborhood restaurants. She went to the doctor. The man said, it's, quote, it's oral anal contact. Oral anal contact, he said. She was shocked. Now, let me just read this paragraph. They didn't teach these things when Selma was in medical school in the 1940s, but she quickly learned that down and dirty realities about enteric diseases. Gay doctors had long recognized that parasitic diseases like amoebiasis, I'm not pronouncing that right, giardiasis, shigellosis, were simply a health hazard of being gay. The problems grew with the new popularity of anal sex in the late 1960s and early 1970s because it was nearly impossible to avoid contact with fecal matter during that act. As sexual tastes grew more exotic and rimming, which is oral anal sex perversion, became fashionable, the problem exploded. There wasn't a more efficient way to get a dose of parasitic spore than by such direct ingestion. And it goes on and on and on, Bill, about the direct health implications, which of course, exploded into HIV/AIDS, killing, cutting short the lives of hundreds of thousands of self-identified gay men. This resulted from those greater tolerance for homosexuality in the law and in the culture.
Yeah, well, since we've legalized it, and since it's come out of the closet and is being promoted as normal and desirable in our media and schools, more people are doing it. And consequently, our publicly funded healthcare system up here is crumbling under the weight of all these STIs and drug overdoses and everything else that is going on as we fall away from God and go on this path of destruction. I think it was Mike Heath earlier was talking about how homosexuality and abortion is linked. Pope John Paul II called it a culture of death. And indeed, that is what I subscribe to. This is a death culture. The end is physical and spiritual death of individuals, and indeed of your nation state.
Can you tell us briefly how bad, and I can't imagine, is the LGBTQ, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer propaganda in Canadian schools?
Oh, it's bad. There's the child that myself and my wife have now, Nikki. When she was in kindergarten, we had a lesbian teacher dealing with her and had her come home convinced she was a boy. So that is how close and personal this has come. I've talked to multiple parents whose kids have come back home from school without parental consent. Coming with these ideas to the parents that two girls can marry each other and two boys can marry each other. I know when I was in school, that kind of thing never came up. And in my entire life, I never thought I was a girl, and I would never tell my parents at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when I come home that two girls can marry each other. This stuff is being pushed up here from K to 12, and there is movements afoot that if you won't help your teenage child transgender, because that's starting to happen by the hundreds of kids now that's doing this, where in the 80s there wasn't a single solitary case. Now it's hundreds. We do have a few cases where social services is trying to take the parents away from the children if they don't get on side with this life-threatening child abuse. So
the power of the state comes down, and also in Canada, haven't even the Christian schools now, the state is saying they're going to decertify. What was that college? Wasn't there
there was Trinity Western, which sort of put up a half-hearted fight. They've capitulated now. Yeah, they weren't going to be allowed to have a law school if they didn't promote LGBT and tell the kids that they didn't have to sign any kind of Christian covenant. It was a Christian school, and you were supposed to agree voluntarily to abide by Christian behavioral standards while you're a staff or student. That's gone the way of the dodo bird. I tried to put Lucas and Nikki into a Christian school last year, actually, here in Leduc. And when they asked why I wanted a Christian school, I guess you're supposed to talk about some nice thing that it's godly to be a good steward of the environment, or, I just told them the truth that I didn't want my children indoctrinated with LGBT propaganda, and the school literally declined to take us.
Was that out of fear?
Well, the principal, I think, is compromised and has no moral qualms with it. But he just said, we support Bill 28. That is the bill. Bill 28 is a bill in Alberta that mandates all schools, public and private, have to have gay-straight alliances. So why in the heck am I going to pay $3,000 a year? That's what the tuition was. Why in the heck am I going to pay that if they're going to have a homosexual club there anyways? Better the devil I know at the public school. And I just try to keep tabs on what's going there.
And Bill, you said after we got off the show yesterday that there used to be a lot of religious freedom in Canada. And
we were equal to the U.S. 30 years ago. This stuff is unknown. We could buy guns up here, any type of gun we wanted, as long as we didn't have a criminal record. We could criticize our political leaders, which I'm being prosecuted for criticizing the prime minister. I'm being sued 104 million on that one, and prosecuted for misgendering a transgender politician. Back in the 80s, I could have trashed either one or the other, and probably a majority of Canadians would have agreed with me back then.
Yeah, Jared, pull that up before we go. The politician. This is incredible, and folks, this is why it's so important. Now, Bill had the temerity to say that this man who is pretending to be a woman, basically, you said he's still a man.
Well, this guy didn't even discover that he's a woman until age 43. He was calling himself a man until then.
It's all based on feelings, right, Bill? No truth, just all feelings.
That's what he says. His words, quote unquote, is "we are women because we say we are." That's his words.
Well, Bill, I'm going to let you have the last word on countries that are looking out at this. And this is why it's so dangerous what Rick Grinnell and hopefully Trump, I mean, there needs to be pressure put on Trump. This is Rick Grinnell. There's an article I wrote about him in LifeSite News. You can read that when it talks about him self-identifying as a gay Christian. And of course, it doesn't end with sodomy laws. If this is allowed to grow, the United States will be forcing countries to support homosexual so-called marriage, or they won't get any aid. It never stops, Bill. And that's why these countries are wise not to go down that path of LGBTQ activism at all.
No, and once you take it out of the criminal code, contrary to gay propaganda lies, you do get more homosexuality. Indeed, in Canada now, they claim that sodomy laws aggravate AIDS. There's no evidence of that. There's evidence that a lax attitude perpetuates all the diseases, including AIDS. And now we're into gender confusion. If this really was something genetic and not to be discouraged, why the heck didn't we have all these so-called transgender kids in the 60s, 70s, and 80s? Right. We never had any. They all came in the last 10 years.
Obviously, it's the effect of propaganda works, Bill. Propaganda works.
And keeping laws and outlawing this stuff also works. It might not work perfectly, but it's a lot better than allowing it.
Right, and this is a very, very dangerous development under Trump. We cannot have Rick Grinnell as the U.S. ambassador to the UN. He will use that perch to promote homosexuality and gender rebellion across the world. That's what he will do because it's part of his effort to rationalize his perverse choices that he's made in his life. Mike, we're out of time here. We're going to come again with Bill Watcott. Bill, you've got so much to say, and we're just going to keep interviewing you because I really want the world to know, to learn from your experience. But Mike, take us out if you can.
Bill, thanks for being on the show, and thank you for listening and viewing the show today. Remember, you can catch all of Americans for Truth live episodes at americansfortruth.com. And while you're there checking out what's been produced over the last month, please click on the donate button and help us to pay the bills.
Right. And also, I want people to click on that. You can go to Bill Watcott's. It's actually easier. Just go to Go Get Funding and plug in Bill's name and make a gift to Bill Watcott because the left is after him and they're trying to knock him out, folks. They're trying to get him either if they can't get him in jail, they want him destitute. So make a donation to Bill Watcott. Go to Go Get Funding. Go Get Funding. We have a link on our website. It's on the caption to the zombies photo. Go Get Funding. Plug in Bill Watcott right there. You're seeing he's getting a little more donations since the show started, Bill. But
thank you.
Well, but we need people to give. I mean, if you're watching this, you say, "What can I do to help?" I'm helpless. I can't do anything. Well, look at. Here's a guy who has every reason to quit, but you know why he can't quit? It's the same reason I can't quit and Mike can't quit, because if the side promoting the lies doesn't quit, how can the people defending the truth quit? And the thing about Bill Watcott is he never quits. I mean, he's one of the bravest guys I've ever met in my life. And I was there in Canada, and I was actually thrown in jail. I had the privilege of being thrown in jail, in a Canadian jail with Bill Watcott. And the whole time I was like, I can't believe this. I can't believe this, but he's been in jail and he's probably going to go to jail again because the people who are pushing this ideology, this movement, they're all about power. They don't care about inclusion. They don't care about diversity, else they would allow Bill in the name of diversity. They don't care about that. They care about power, and they are a totalitarian movement, and they want to ultimately wipe us out in terms of squelching our voice, and we can't let it. And that's why we got our show, Americans for Truth. Go to make a donation to Americans for Truth. Make a donation to Bill Watcott. Help his family live, because the left is trying to shut him down. And what a disgrace to the Western world that once had the rule of law, and now all it is the rule of the sodomitic left. That's all that is important anymore, I guess. If you're on the left, is that you promote sexual and gender deviance. It's a travesty. We don't want this to happen in the United States. Canada is our warning. Bill is a prophet. And Bill will have you again tomorrow. Remember, folks, always defend the truth, because bottom line is it's not our truth, it's God's truth. And we'll see you tomorrow on Americans for Truth Live.